Hello, welcome to Framework. I am Al Schwartz. With me, as always, John Bernard.
Hello.
And returning to talk up Interstellar with us is Mr. Matt Rose.
Hey, everyone.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, where Nolan-oscopy rolls on, and you guys did. Nolan made a Spielberg movie,
Yep.
and
Very much.
it's all right. I kind of I guess that's my take. I kind of just wish Spielberg had gone ahead and made this one. Maybe just passed AI over to Nolan. I think that might have been a better fit for their relative sensibilities. Um, but Matt, you're a big fan, right?
I love this movie. I personally put it in my overall top 10 of all time.
Wow. Okay, that's going hard on it.
All right. So what am I missing?
I like it, man. I rewatched it for the first time since theaters. You know, I saw it there, kind of unmoved by it, kind of just like, it's fine, whatever. Watched it for the first time again after I don't know, how old was this now? 6,
13,
7 years.
14?
No, really?
No, 2013 or 14. I mean, is when it came out.
Okay.
Which makes it several years old. Yeah.
Okay, so yes, I hadn't seen it since then, and watched it now, and I was like, oh shit! Turns out I really like this movie.
Do you think it's just that you became a dad recently, and now that it just plays completely on a completely different register?
I was conscious of that, and I was like, is this me? Is this me just having a kid now and having a specific anchor to this narrative and to the emotions that are being brought up here? And maybe, but it's still not exactly relatable.
Right.
It's still not something I'm particularly worried about, beyond the stuff that already was worrisome, which is the sort of post calamity America that exists in the beginning of the film. I don't think it's that. I think it actually is very, very good. I think this is a very strong film. It is out of his comfort zone, obviously. It is a Spielberg movie in so many ways. And while I do have to say, I would have been very interested to see the Spielberg version of this. It's kind of crazy and kind of just as exciting to me to see Christopher Nolan do a film that is very much not his thing. And the way it bends towards being a Christopher Nolan film, even while it is this different kind of film, this sort of emotional father-daughter love family story within the this hard sci-fi framework.
Yeah, you said it was outside his comfort zone, but I was struck by all the ways that he bends it into it to make it his comfort zone.
Yes. Well, that's what's cool about it. That's I wouldn't want him to see him completely going against what he's good at. I want to see him kind of taking something odd, that doesn't that's not the intellectual exercise that is about emotion and love, and making a movie about that, trying to make somebody else's movie with an undeniable Nolan stamp.
This is sort of the case with Inception too, when we talked about that, but it's about emotion and love, but it sort of makes that into an intellectual exercise.
Well, that's how he would have to do it.
Yeah, I suppose.
To that end, though, I think one advantage that Interstellar has over a movie like Inception regarding emotional stakes is that Inception tells you, and not only does it tell you, but it buries the telling you of it, especially in terms of Cobb, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Marion Cotillard. It tells you. The film just tells you about it, doesn't really show it to you apart from really perfunctory things, whereas this movie takes great pains to show you explicitly the relationships between Matthew McConaughey and his kids, Michael Caine and Anne Hathaway. Just it takes the time to actually show and make it work, and I think the script is surprisingly kind of strong in showing these relationships and letting the actors make these relationships work. And in particular, I think McConaughey is quite good in this, and in finding things that aren't necessarily in the written word or on the page, about showing things with the young, especially the young Murph, who's, I think, very, very good in this. She turns into Jessica Chastain, and I think Chastain does excellent work, but the little girl who plays young Murph is phenomenal. And then of course you got Timothy Chalamet, who's doing pretty good. I mean, that's kind of the secondary child relationship, and that's kind of just handled, I think, more on the side. But the great pains that are taken in the first act before they even leave Earth to make sure that everything works, and so that you buy into everything that comes later on in the film.
Yeah. Okay. Time is something we actually obviously have to talk about here because it's a Nolan movie, so he's going to play around with time and temporality. Also, just one of my gripes about this movie is something that a drum I beat constantly now is just it's just so long. You know, I just
You're right. It's long.
I can't believe it's like 30 minutes and we're still haven't left Earth. When I'm rewatching this, like I remember this being a space movie. We spent a lot of time on the farm and like at parent teacher conferences and crap for for a while. And I was thinking like I almost think there might be a better version of this that just opens with like the launch of sending them into space and plays around more with like flashbacks and intercutting like some of that earlier stuff, relationship building stuff, uh, while
That would have been such
the
an
mission is
obvious thing for
underway.
him to do, though. Like, it seems like that
Mhm.
would have been the Nolan way to go. Then, his natural instinct would have been to fill this with flashbacks and I don't know, lines of temporality. Like he has those written into the script. Where things are happening, in the past and at the same moment because of fifth dimensional travel. But I kind of like that he restrained himself here and delivered what feels like his Spielberg film. And the Spielberg film absolutely would have the family and the home life and the Americana and corn. Just so much corn. Corn is so cinematic, and he
That's
really
true.
gets he gets to show all this stuff, or the reservoir, and the drone flying over it, all this stuff. It's really good world building. I think I love all this stuff. I think it's unique to Nolan too.
I'm struggling to remember what why did the drone matter? What was like? I know they stripped it for
Yeah,
parts, but
The drone had been flying for several years. It was a high altitude drone from India. It was a part of
right.
the Delhi space, whatever their version of NASA was. I forget how they termed it. But the idea was that it had been flying up there for, I think, 15 or 20 years and had finally come down to Earth. And they were going to reuse the technology that was in it for different purposes. In this particular
But from a
case, it was
story perspective, what did salvaging that drone like set up or get them on the path of? That's what I'm trying to. It's been like 2 weeks since I watched it now, and I'm
I
not
think
I
it,
think it's
remembering.
world building.
yeah,
I think it is actually like it sets up that this is a world that is that has a lot of aeronautic science going on because that they are desperate. They are kind of like clinging to it, and this family in particular understands that science and is versed in the world of physics and mathematics required for planetary flight.
right.
Like, these are people who know how to track an Indian space drone uh, and drive across through a cornfield to catch it, and that is who they are because he was involved in this program NORAD stuff in the past, and the dead wife was as well as we learn, and it also shows kind of a world on the brink of collapse that this is now the norm. It's the same stuff as like the last okra harvest for that's ever going to happen. Just they just burnt the fields over there, all that stuff. That feels like this is showing this creepy climate disaster future, and
Right.
this is one of my favorite like near future, not quite apocalypse, but pretty much apocalypse things that I'm making that very specific, but I really do like the world building here, and it's something I don't usually associate with him. Like this is so much more well realized a world than Inception, which I would have said before we watched these again that Inception is the better film for sure, but I'm changing my mind on that now. Because I don't know. This feels like muscles he's never flexed before, and he does a surprisingly good job. And they don't actually, in any way, stop this from being a very, very Christopher Nolan movie. It's extremely him, even as it is all these other things that he doesn't normally do.
Well, you have in the opening section there. I mean, they're establishing through, again, the drone, again with the fact that he's at a PTA conference where they're uh, talking about their, the faked moon landings and so forth. And then he also has that complaint where he talks about, the kind of the regression of technology that, his wife died because she wasn't able to get an MRI and catch whatever it was that was inside of her. I think it was cancer. I don't think they specify. Forgive me, I don't remember. But it all establishes that society is collapsing at a very, very slow rate. No real effort is being expended to maintain even current levels of technology. Just the sole focus is just on food. And going back to something else that you brought up earlier, wondering, you were wondering if the film would have benefited from, say, cutting out that first half hour and showing it in chunks later on, perhaps in flashback sequences. The film that comes to mind the most that is similar to this in terms of establishing things, taking the time in establishing the relationships and everything, is The Deer Hunter. Because you have The Deer Hunter, you have that
Hmm.
whole wedding sequence at the beginning of the film, that they actually tested the film without that wedding sequence because, just to get to the action or to minimize it or to really cut it down. Whereas I think that wedding sequence, you really need it in order to understand the characters that are involved and their relationships. I think in a very similar way, you have that here with Interstellar. I think if you were to lose that, you would really lose the heart of the film. I mean, you definitely would not have the emotional resonance in the film that you get later on.
I agree. I think that movie, the movie is about that stuff. Like ultimately, um, kicking and screaming needs be that movie. The movie is about that stuff, and yeah, you need it. I think. Now, I do think it's too long, and there is something I would cut, which is pretty much everything on Earth after he leaves Earth. Like I don't ever need to cut back to to see what's up with Murph and her brother and Topher Grace farting around. I'm sort of like, why is this stuff here? Why am I watching this?
It's
What?
that stuff. I think it has to be there to service the like innate Nolan aspects of we've got to one make this a movie where Michael Caine is uh, the caretaker for somebody else's kids, for the protagonist's kids. And two, it's a way in a way it feels kind of shoehorned in here to me, but it's like, okay, we have to also like establish this whole thing of a noble lie of Plan B was all a what elaborate charade, um,
Yeah,
done with good intentions.
I like that. I like having you're never doing bad. You want to give Michael Caine a deathbed confession scene. That's not the worst thing you can do. It's a good scene. The stuff with I, what I'm talking about though is like Jessica Chastain fighting with her brother and Topher Grace, and
Oh
we're
yeah,
cutting back and forth between that and a fist fight in space with Matt Damon. I'm just like, why are you taking me away from the space fist fight for this piece of domestic drama that I don't even fully understand? Like,
mm.
that it couldn't matter less compared to this other thing going on. And I don't know, wouldn't this movie just be so much more effective if the only time we see adult Murph is in these videos that
Videos.
we get, that he sees?
It's an interesting
Wouldn't that
point.
be just kind of more heartbreaking? When I don't know, like I feel like you could make that film, and maybe the reason that this thing just got a little bit overblown is because he's so successful and he can do whatever he wants. He can just like, no, this movie should be 3 hours when actually it should be 2.5 hours. I don't know. I'm not complaining too much. I think, like I said, I think it's really good. If I were to change one thing about this movie, it would be that I think it's a little long-winded and in an unnecessary way.
I understand the impetus to want to make Murph a more rounded, active character. Um,
I think they already
and
did it with the kid though. Like the kid already is that
well, but
Murph.
then you put her on.
Yeah.
She's just a kid, and then she's a dying old woman. Like I don't. I mean, again, I'm not disagreeing with you that movie might be better without all that stuff, but I understand. I think the thought process that they had to do more with that character as an adult to maintain the through line.
Well, you also have to understand that a big part of the through line is that she's working with Michael Caine to try and find a solution and enable Plan A to happen. So you need to see that struggle, which makes the triumph of the final scenes in the film when he's in the Tesseract communicating with her makes sense, and have that, you need to have that kind of stakes. I think. I
Yeah,
will
he
agree.
has to be passing that information to her
Right.
so that they can make that miracle breakthrough.
Right.
Um, I think that the problem is more kind of what John was getting at before, that uh, there's a very contrived like ticking clock that they impose on that. Like like they need a reason why there's tension around like her hanging out in her childhood bedroom receiving a message, which would be a very passive position to be in with no like again, no ticking clock. So they have to gin up this conflict with Casey Affleck uh, about how he's gonna, I don't know, come and beat Topher Grace to death. I don't know what he's
Uh,
gonna do there. He's
yeah,
gonna
I
burn
couldn't
down the
explain
house
it.
or something. What?
It's just like what are we doing here? Like that scene. Like this is maybe the most easily explained Nolan film in many ways. Like this is not trying to screw with you at all. This wants you to understand everything. That's not Inception. It's not Tenet. It really is, like a Spielberg film. It is like, here are the stakes. Here are the emotional stakes. Yes, we've got some weird time stuff. We're going to make sure it makes sense. You're going to get it. Don't worry. And even the very ending, I would say it errs on the side of being succinct and clear, and just making sure that you understand narratively what happened. And I like this look on him. I do. So that is another reason I think that this ginned up stuff with the home life back in the farm, kind of just like, if I don't even know what's going on here, why am I going to pay attention to this? Clearly, this is not where the stakes are. This is not what the movie's going to turn on,
Right.
whatever this relationship is. So yeah, I don't know why that's in there. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, it's trying to make the passing of the message that saves humanity into like a buzzer beater, you know,
Yeah,
a tense thing that
Right.
it's not
otherwise it kind of
necessary.
wouldn't be.
He can travel through time at the end. He has fifth dimensional abilities.
Right.
That's true. He could just go in that big, psychedelic bookshelf. He could just go one shelf farther down, and it's the day before,
But she
or
wasn't
And
15
if
minutes
there
it's
the
before.
day
not, they
before.
could just say it is, and it wouldn't. Yeah, it would make sense to me.
But she wasn't there the day before. He needs to be there at a specific. He has found her at a specific time when she's actually there and trying to figure things out.
Mhm.
She's got the
Mm-hmm.
watch. She's talked to me, explain this to me. So so yeah, you have that added tension with Casey Affleck and the burning farm going on, which I agree. I mean, does it add tension? Yeah, but it's kind of artificial tension. But at
It,
this,
it
Mm-hmm.
feels
but
that way, yeah.
yeah, I agree, and I will absolutely agree that that's maybe not one of the strongest elements of the film itself. Um, and there's a couple other places where I think they could have done things a little bit better, but overall, I think it's very successful. But another thing to touch
Yeah,
on
this
is,
is my only complaint, really.
yeah,
This is my
I,
only thing.
right, and for me, the length of the film works. I don't know what I would necessarily cut out because, again, having seen this film several times and personally falling in love with the film, I liked everything that's in there. But I think that you could probably trim out pretty easily 5 minutes, just to tighten up a
Oh, for
couple
sure.
things here and
For
there. I mean,
sure.
you want to argue that you can trim out a half hour. I don't know. I think you would lose a lot if you were to trim out that much. But I think that there's some tightening up in individual areas that you could do.
It would
And
require writing it a little bit different, I
I
think.
agree.
I don't know. It
well,
could
yeah,
just
I
be
mean,
a
what
nitpick.
I had thrown out there is a would be a pretty major rewrite. And there's two things here that I think are related but not quite the same. Is that length and pace are not exactly the same. So I'm
Yeah.
not complaining about the length here. Really, I guess I'm more about the pace of that first half hour. To me, is so deadly slow, uh, and it's stuff, especially on rewatch. Where like for me, it's not where the heart of the movie is, or it's not like the good more interesting stuff to me is the space stuff.
Okay.
And so and once the world, I've been through the world building once, I kind of already know that stuff, and it's just that's a really long half hour for me. And so what I was talking about is not necessarily let's just chop a half hour out of the beginning, but if we rework it so that we start, with we get to the space stuff a lot faster, and then we can circle back and get to some of that stuff or whatever, and maybe the movie's not that much shorter for that, but it feels like it's moving more consistently, and the
Okay.
pace is a little faster. Is what I'm getting at. Obviously, this is all very hypothetical. I don't have like
Sure.
a diagram of how it would work.
Yeah, and I get it. I personally find that all necessary in order to generate the core emotional response in the film. And again, the first time I saw it. Again, I thought the movie was you know, it didn't do much for me.
Hmm.
It was only on subsequent rewatches where I got it and was able to connect with it. For me, I mean, I saw it on IMAX and I thought it was a gorgeous technical exercise, but it just didn't do anything for me. And then repeated
Same here.
viewings, yeah, and then repeated viewings, the film just I dialed in on it entirely, and um, I actually watched this with my wife who had never seen it. She she knew I was going to be doing this podcast, and I was like, I want to watch this again. She was like, well, you know what? Let me watch it with you. You keep talking about it. And so she watched it with me and she really liked it. She asked really, there was a couple things that confused her, but she asked really good questions. And when it was all over, she was like, that was really good. I'm like, yes, I feel vindicated. I said, I knew you would like this because she's real hit or miss on Christopher Nolan in general. But she was like, no, this one has a really solid emotional core to it. It's not fake. And again, I gotta give a lot of credit, I think, to the actors here. I think McConaughey, he McConaughey was phenomenal in Dallas Buyers Club, and he's been great in a lot of movies. But I think this is one of his best performances overall. He really has a lot of weight that he has to carry to make this whole thing work, and I think he does an exceptional job.
Unquestionably.
It's one of his best, like, straight down the middle leading man performances.
Yeah, that's how I'd describe it. Yeah. It's such a big star performance. He does all the things you need a movie star to do in this.
This is one where I tried to get my wife to watch this. I mean, I don't make too much effort to drag her along with these that much. I mean, like, we started with Tarantino, so. But this is one where I was like, this is one I could see that you might actually like or whatever. And then she saw 169 minutes and just went nope. So, but I still think she might have liked it. Do you guys like the strength of this movie, or the what you like about it is, like, it's the family drama?
Yeah. I mean, well, not just. I think that it is essential to the film. I think it works. I really like the space stuff, though. I really enjoy all that. That's really good things.
That's the stuff that I respond to the most, or that I find most interesting or most unique about this. Because a lot of that other stuff, yeah, it's not bad. McConaughey does a good job of it. So does, like you said, Mackenzie Foy, the young Murph, does a really good job there. But it feels a little Spielberg paint by numbers to me. And like I said, it moves so slow that when we get into space, that's where I'm like, okay, this is stuff that I can only get from one or two other movies. Some of that,
Right.
like this particular sort of strata of, I guess it's hard sci-fi. I guess so. I mean,
it doesn't seem like this is too locked to reality.
Right.
But
it's heightened, but it's also like non-militarized. It's not, action sci-fi the way that a lot of, hard sci-fi. I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking of the guy on Party Down that just goes all in. He only writes hard sci-fi, and you just figure he's doing aliens constantly, or ripoffs. Yeah.
This came right in the middle of, like, we were in a period in the aughts. No, not in the teens, I guess, where every year we got like one hard sci-fi, adult sci-fi kind of serious movie. Then they were usually really long, and I think it was like we had like Arrival, we had this, we had
Ad Astra.
Ad Astra's recently. That's one that's definitely on the same level of hard sci-fi as this.
First Man, yeah.
Sunshine.
Yeah, Sunshine even is a little, well, yeah, that might be the beginning of it. Yeah. Ad Astra has some crazy shit in it, though.
I like that movie. I personally like that movie a lot. I know I feel like I'm one of the few people that likes that movie too, but either way, but going back to what you were saying, though, I mean, this isn't action sci-fi. This is thinking sci-fi, because you do need, much like all of other Nolan films, you need to pay attention to what's going on. I mean, at the end of the movie, if you think about it, you realize that very little time has actually passed for Matthew McConaughey. If you actually do the math, like this last time I watched it, I paid attention to it, and from the time he leaves Earth till the end of the movie, less than a year has passed for him in terms of actual time. Whereas it's been, close, I think it's like 99 years roughly that's passed for anyone on Earth like Murph.
I mean, it's time fuckery, but it's explained in a very good terms here. Like, he does a really good job explaining how this works. And it really is, what the film kind of is about as a big idea. Well, I mean, what it's about actually is the familial bond between Murph and Cooper. But, like, I feel like the appeal here, the fun thing about this movie is the time dilation stuff and the fifth dimensional travel. That seems like the the really exciting part about this, at least to Nolan. I don't know if that would have been Spielberg's main interest, but it's definitely the hook. And that water planet sequence in the middle. Wow, what
It's
a great
really
idea.
good. Yeah.
What a great sequence.
Mhm.
What a fantastic way to create tension. Just like every second there counts, and you're on it every single moment. You're just like, no, don't go get that. Just like every little bit of that is excellent filmmaking, and it's all because it was correctly set up. Well, it's not all. I mean, it's an amazing looking and shot sequence. It's
It
really
really
good in
is.
every way.
No, but I
But the
take your
theme,
point there.
yeah, yeah,
Right. In
it's
contrast to a fire in a cornfield, yeah, they make every second count there
right.
because they've established as a mental exercise that every second actually counts for a week, and so you can't be wasting any of them, even when
Right.
there's not you know a mortal threat looming down right over your shoulder. Just the threat of, oh no, her leg got stuck. It's going to take 2 minutes to pull her out. Like that means so much more than 2 minutes.
Right.
Yeah,
I would actually
it's so
say that
cool.
that whole sequence, and I'm glad you brought it up. I think from conception to execution and everything, I think that sequence is one of Nolan's best sequences in any of his films. Um,
Yeah,
the
I'd have to agree.
conceptually, you get it. I mean, I love the way they explain it, but not over explain it when they're going to leave the one crewman. His name escapes me, up on the ship, and he's like, "I'm going
Rom
to do
something.
this." Yeah, I'm going to do this. I know what I'm going to do for the next. Theoretically, you're only going to be gone an hour your time, so hopefully, I'll see you in 7 or 8 years my time. But they explain it. You get it without having to have it hit over the head. You get it, and then everything down there, the tension is great, accompanied by a really great uh, score from Hans Zimmer, which is something else. I mean, I think the score in the film in general is great, but I think the way it's well utilized here is great. Really helps enhance things. But yeah, from beginning to end, it's just excellent. And when they finally make it back up to the Endurance, which is one heck of a set, by the way, it's one of the best sets I've ever seen, the Endurance. But when they actually get up there and it opens it up, and he's there going, it's been 23 and a half years. It's like,
Yeah.
the weight of it hits you and the weight of it hits them. It's just a really,
Hmm.
really well executed scene.
I kind
Yeah.
of wish we could have found a way to see things from his perspective for a little bit somehow, of just like watching this frenetic action sequence that we've been watching them like run from that wave and whatnot. Wait, that looks so cool, by the way. Great visual. But the idea that he's sort of watching this calamity in slow motion over the course of 6 months, uh, while while we watch them rush around, but he's just like getting up in the morning and looking, and like, oh, they've almost like stop motion animation or something. Like they moved this far, just a couple of inches on the screen or something. I don't know how you would go about doing that, but it just,
That does seem cool. Like if you
yeah.
could figure it out. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
That's
it
the
would
type of
be,
space stuff I'm saying that really like it
and,
gets me popping.
I mean, that would be interesting, but at the same time, I think it's more effective. They're coming up going, how long have we actually been gone? And then it opens up and he's there, and he's great, obviously. And he's gone, you guys have been gone 23, 24 years. You need to have that
Yeah.
hit. And McConaughey really sells it, especially, when he's like, I've got all these videos I've got to watch. And then he gets his big
Yeah.
Oscar scene, when he's
Yeah.
watching the videos.
It's a pretty good scene. It's a powerful idea, and yeah, like the it really does kind of feel like it's a hammer hit, just watching that play out, and just approaching playing a scene like that, I would think would be incredibly difficult. You're gonna watch your children age 20 years over the next course of video in 20 minutes, and they're just gonna be pissed at you the whole time. I mean,
Yeah, they're just going to be
brutal.
getting more and more
Yeah.
pissed off.
Yeah. And yeah, they mentioned just in passing that John Lithgow died, stuff like that, and it's just like, oh god, right? Of course he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing run there in the middle of the film. Probably the film at its height, right there. I think it doesn't really get better than that scene. I mean, but just as a sequence, the water planet into watching that video is a pretty it's a pretty wonderful half-hour sequence. And yeah, one of the high points of the career, I would say. Really, really an anchor for the film, and everything after that's pretty good too. Like,
Yeah, but
really do enjoy the Damon stuff.
I like the Damon stuff too.
Yeah.
It's so that's the stuff I like the best is the just space travel stuff. Anything about like how hard and dangerous space travel is great. You know, whenever they do the wages of fear type
Right.
things,
Yeah.
like we have to do so much, like this very delicate operation in this horribly unwelcoming environment. You know, that Sunshine's great for that stuff too. But I feel like I want the movie to be more of that. And when it gets to the end, the very end, and it's doing the 2001 type stuff, and sort of the twist ending, you know, he was the ghost all along thing. I'm like, yeah, that's. I feel like I've seen versions of this before, and versions of it that I liked better, or at least that just by virtue of getting to me when I was younger, they got
Right.
to actually surprise me. So I have two, like I think two possible gripes for that I think underlie why this movie just doesn't move me the way it does you guys. Um, on the family drama front, this just came to me that part of it I think is that this movie feels a bit like uh, wish fulfillment for absentee fathers in a way
Man,
that, you
does
know,
it? Yeah.
I mean, it's just sort of the ultimate, you know, in the way that like the Taken movies are sort of the ultimate divorced dad fantasy. That, you know, that, well, eventually everybody's going to realize I was right. And, yeah, oh, thank me for being a hard ass. But in this, it's
Yeah,
that
your new stepdad might have money, but can he rescue you from rapers? Yeah, like
exactly.
Does he have certain set of skills? No.
Yeah. But for this, it's the absentee thing. It's like, well, I'll go off and do my own thing and not actually spend any time with my kid. But eventually, you know, on her deathbed, not even my deathbed, on my kid's deathbed, that I will go on to outlive. They will forgive me and tell me they do love me and they understand that what I went on to go pursue instead of fathering them was ultimately more important. My work was more important to mankind. And then I will go back to doing my work.
Right.
I could go chase a young woman.
It
Go
is
chase
funny
after
how
a
dismissive she is at the end. You know, she's
Yeah.
like, "Great to see you, Dad. I knew you'd show up. Now get out of here." You know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, I can kind of understand it, and that all works for me. But
I don't know how
it's
else
written
she's supposed to be in this situation. Like,
right,
I don't think I don't want her throwing a teenage tantrum when she's 98 years old and dying with her
no,
surrounded by her
she's
great
got
grandkids. But it just like something about it feels like, yeah,
it feels
this
a
seems
little
to,
written.
yeah, it feels very like it serves, it
Let's
serves
get
to
this scene.
absolve a
Yeah.
particular type of workaholic, perhaps,
well,
so completely. You know?
well. Bear in mind, she hasn't seen him. She hasn't seen him, you know, for pretty much 100 years at that point. You know,
Yeah.
so what kind of emotional connection does she have with him apart from memories? You know, whereas he's still got, you know, for him, he hasn't seen her in only roughly a year his time, so it is different in that regard. I don't know. For me, that works.
I mean, it's fascinating. It's a really interesting scene, and it's the end of the movie. Clearly, you know that is the final thing you want to leave with for sure. Even as you could go on to see what's up with the Anne Hathaway planet, but it
No, I
is.
think leaving that open ended is better.
Oh yeah, it is for sure. It is, but it is also like this is the big argument for the Spielberg version of this. Like this, because this was developed as a script for Spielberg, and I mean it really feels like it's a few drafts away from being the exact like bookend old man answer to Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yep.
Like it is so explicitly that, or really close to that, that it almost does feel like a shame sometimes. Now I'm really happy with what we got. You know that it's a Nolan film and it has this incredible Nolan streak in it. I think makes up for it, but I do kind of see how like yeah maybe the Spielberg version of this has something significant to say in his career. They never got the script to that point though. You know, they never quite made this the answer to Close Encounters that it seems like it was intended to be. So it doesn't need to be. If it's a Chris Nolan film, it can be its own thing, and maybe that's for the best. But yeah, once you've kind of seen that skeleton underneath it, it's hard not to think about it in those terms.
Well, and the other thing I want to make clear is, again, like I don't know that I really want her like taking him to task for anything there or whatever.
No,
Like
no.
I think it's an interesting sci-fi scenario they have set up, and given that, like, I'm not sure how you fix that or change it to answer my criticism there exactly, but I think the other part of it, though, that it's more of a plot thing, I guess, but to me, it strikes such a bum note that it sort of undermines like everything, like including the emotional underpinning of this other stuff, and it is setting up that twist ending where he's sending the messages back through time, and so we're setting that up at the beginning of the movie, and it's like, oh, like there was a ghost in my room, whatever, and they don't believe her because they're a house of science, dag nabbit.
Yeah.
But then he goes up and sees the ghost stuff too, and they get a message on it that gives them like really actionable intelligence, that is clearly a message from beyond.
Yeah.
And they go, and it leads them to a thing that opens up the whole movie. And nobody in like NASA or them like seems to connect at all to like, hey, we're trying to like crack this unbreakable code of the universe, and the thing we have to go on is that this like wormhole opened up out of nowhere, and that's a wormhole is this time space phenomenon that makes everything weird. Also, we just got confirmation, like we just had a completely supernatural experience that like clearly passed us real information, and nobody like connects that thing that they went through to maybe that's something to do with what we're trying to do over here at all.
I think they do. I think they're talking about the unknown they who are out there guiding them. I think it's tied into that, and ends up being them in the future with an understanding of fifth dimensional travel.
So at the beginning of the movie, though, that was like one of the first things that occurred to me as somebody who read like one book on theoretical physics, 15 years before the movie came out. And the fact that like nobody's treating that as the most promising lead we've gotten in this entire process, like it's actually a bum note to me. It seems like they want us as the audience to sort of forget about this so that it can come back later and be a surprising, sort of twist. But because of that, they make all of the smartest scientists in the world, they're working on this exact thing, kind of brush that off in a way that I find rings very false to me.
Okay, but is this movie stuff though? Is
Yes.
this I want to maintain the surprise for the audience. Now,
Yep.
like on the Dark Knight Rises episode that we just put out, I talk about how annoyed I am that they show Alfred in the little Italian cafe, about 45 minutes into the movie, because I was like, well, that's the goddamn end of the movie, isn't it?
Exactly.
And I mean,
that's exactly what I'm going through here. Absolutely the same thing.
Yeah.
Except that
I'm
this
with
isn't.
you. I'm with you there.
Except that the characters in this movie are explicitly like scientists trying to crack space-time puzzles,
Right.
which in a way that like the Dark Knight characters were not trying to like suss out where Alfred would be at the, I don't know,
Right.
Fair enough.
But I think they keep it vague specifically for the fact that they refer to it, especially in the beginning, as they. If they had made that connection early on, that it was that the they was somebody in her bookshelf, I think it might have given away the fact that the they is actually us in the future. And I think that they were trying to purposely keep that as a revelation that would hit both McConaughey and the viewer when he's in the Tesseract later on in the film.
Right. I'm just saying, as a viewer, and it was the very first thing I thought of, so it failed on that yard. But it felt effortful to like,
well,
okay, we're establishing this in the first act, so it's got to be a thing in the third act. Like it seems by the third act that adult Murph has kind of forgotten all about it for a while, and I was like, I don't know how you ever forget about that, particularly when like the focus of your life is studying this precise type of phenomena.
That is true. And yeah, I mean, it's impossible to like watch those scenes, now or when it came out without being like, oh, well, clearly this bookshelf ghost giving them accurate Morse code directions to NORAD. And clearly that'll pay off. That's going to mean something later. It's, I can't I can't pretend I'm going to not see that something's going to be made of that. So, I mean, you're not wrong. There's a lot getting thrown at you in this. There's a lot of things that kind of could steal your attention. Characters, relationships, rules of time and space that are constantly getting updated as over the course of the movie.
That's where the artfulness of it comes in.
Yeah.
With like seeding in these type of twists is it is sleight of hand. You have to distract the audience
You're
with
right.
something else so that they do forget about that thing. And I think we're finding that's kind of hard to do in Nolan movies because they are so intricate and rule bound.
Conversely, he's quite good at it, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe like the earlier works, it seems to work really well in The Prestige, in Memento, maybe even up to Inception. I feel like those twists do work pretty well when they come. And like I said, Dark Knight Rises and this as back-to-back movies, again, the setup does seem to like tip the hand way more strongly to me. And maybe part of that's just there's an additional meta layer where now we're getting so familiar with Nolan that it's like, well,
Yeah,
this is a Nolan movie about space. It's not going to be, a guardian angel that did it. It's not divine intervention that did this.
Something to this. I do think that maybe I don't know. I think, and this might actually be another reason why I was a little bit less warm on this when I first saw it, is you have no idea what they're going to find in space the first time. You have no idea. Are we getting aliens? Like how weird is this going to get? Does the possibility for I don't know, some sort of 2001 space gods? I mean, is that where we're headed? That's all on the table.
Right.
First time you watch this,
Yeah.
And I think that it doesn't go there, that it's just like, well, it was us all along, like you don't really see aliens or anything. You don't really, I think that is a little deflating in some ways in that Contact way, where you're kind of like, well, what's it going to be? It could be literally anything. But once you know what it is, I think it's easier to kind of be like, okay, I see how that's been put together in a way that is satisfying. Or at least it was for me.
I mean, it's us, but I think we are the fifth dimensional gods in that case. Like it is this 2001 start.
But we save ourselves. I like that idea that we save ourselves, and I think similar to Arrival, Arrival plays around with the idea that time doesn't matter. Well, now we're in a situation here where we can technologically apparently control time ourselves later on, so we're retroactively going back and doing the things necessary in order to establish that we can progress beyond Earth and continue as a species. So obviously you have a big time loop that you have to worry about there in a similar fashion to Arrival. But for me, again, it all works, and I like again the fact that we are saving ourselves. It's nothing. It's nothing external to humanity that's doing this. We placed the wormhole there. We did all this sort of stuff to make that happen.
I like that concept, but it is us so far removed in the future and with magical powers that it feels to me like a semantic distinction that it is us. Like it may as well be divine intervention. I think though Arrivals is a really good sort of companion piece to this, and that it plays around with a lot of the same concepts. Including, I'd say that one does a much better job of contriving a sort of like ticking clock for the climax of why they have to figure it out, like at this particular moment, or all is lost. Even though the conceit is that you transcend time and space to the point where time doesn't matter anymore. So it's a little hard to do that concept in a context of a film that unspools along a linear timeline. And I think Arrival treads that needle a lot better, maybe by being more focused and not having to find a way to include Topher Grace.
Well, it's so maximalist.
Topher Grace is your dog to kick on this, huh?
Well,
nothing against him as a person. But the character is just nothing here.
I mean, I think that there is something to be said, for that. It gets so big in Interstellar. It's everything at the end, and that's, I feel like, why it wraps up so quickly once we've kind of landed, once we figure it out, like, oh no, I understand now. It's fifth dimensional travel. Here's what we need to do. I'll pass you the coordinates or whatever. And then everything is solved and he just wakes up in a place and it's just like, yeah. Well, we figured it out. We don't really need to know the mechanics of that because we don't want to sit around and listen to how that works for 15 minutes or whatever it would actually take to make real sense of it. So it's shorthand at the end. Right. And that does have, I guess, some hand in dumbing it down a little bit more than Arrival would. This is a much more ambitious film than Arrival, just on a sense of scale. There's, I don't know what, like 30 significant characters in this movie, something like that. If we're counting Topher Grace, and Arrival is much more focused.
It's ambitious. Yeah, I'd
Mm-hmm.
say on the sense of scale, certainly. Conceptually, I think they're working on similar levels of
Yeah.
ambition. But we're kind of skip past the whole Matt Damon thing of it all.
Oh,
And I
I
want
want
to
to
go
do a
with
whole thing on this. Yes.
okay, because I remember people kicking him around, or that character around, that part of the movie around a lot when this first came out, and I actually really like that part. That is the
Same.
part. You know, there's other parts of this movie where people are sort of giving speeches about humanity and human emotion in the context of the uncaring void of space that will devour us all. And I feel like Damon's character actually like personifies that and dramatizes sort of some of that, the human frailty in the face of this stuff, in a way that is more compelling to me.
I agree. He's and he it's great casting. It's fantastic
Yeah.
to have him here. I mean, it's just sort of weird that this movie hit at the same time as The Martian. It's another one of those
Right.
teen hard sci-fi movies. I think this one came out first, right? Like he was in this, and
Yes.
then like 6 months later, The Martian came out, or something like
Oh,
that.
no, Mario was like 3 years later, wasn't it?
Oh, was it
I
that
don't think it
far
was.
away?
I don't think it was that far. They were within
It,
a couple of years, but
I think it was
I
like the
will say
next year,
this:
maybe.
when I saw this theatrically, when he appeared,
Right.
most of my theater wasn't expecting Matt Damon to be in this. It was a good surprise.
Yeah, same. I didn't know he was in this, and him coming out of that sleep pod is great. It's a great reveal, and yeah, it's really odd that. Well, I mean, I guess what happened is I think this one came first, and he took this role, and then he couldn't say no to The Martian because it's a perfect Matt Damon role. Uh, but it is weird he played two stranded on a planet guys in a row,
I mean,
and especially as this first one is sort of making fun of the Martian character almost.
it seems like that a little bit, but it's also just it. If Matt Damon has been typecast as anything, it's the boy that everybody else has to drop everything to save.
Right.
Uh, from Goodwill Hunting through Saving Private Ryan, and
Right.
then his Lost in Space duology.
Right.
We've talked about Nolan not having a lot of hand at comedy. I do find this character to be very funny. I think almost everything he says is hilarious, especially after the reveal that he's kind of a bad guy. Like like when he hits him in the face with a rock and just like, "Don't judge me. You have been tested as I have." It just goes off
Right.
on these
He's
self-important rants. It's so funny.
and that's some of the stuff that doesn't work for me. I think his delivery
Oh,
on
it's the
I
best.
think his
I
delivery
love
on
it.
some of that stuff is wrong. That's like my one complaint with the whole Damon sequence is as he's don't judge me. You haven't been tested. All that kind of stuff. I mean I can buy a guy that is so sure that he's going to be landing on the right planet, and to have that realization hit, that arrogance of, oh God, no, I'm hosed. This. So what am I going to do? He can't accept the fact that he's not the one, and he's probably going to die. Um, I
Yeah,
mean, I can
and I like
understand.
that it
That's
played in
that's
that like
relatable,
it requires some of that arrogance to taking on that job,
right?
Yeah.
and the way that sort of like turns on him.
Right.
Again, a lot of this is off screen stuff that we kind of have to like imagine for ourselves. Some of the most interesting stuff in this movie doesn't take place in actual scenes that we get
Right.
to see, but
Very Nolan. Yes.
it's the stuff that I
But
like.
but I also like the reveal
Yeah.
that he knew that it was going to be Plan B all along. When
Mm-hmm.
when he has the thing going, yeah, Plan A was a long shot. That wasn't, regardless of what you were told, Plan A was a long shot. We were always going for Plan B, and
Mhm.
that's a pretty big hit to have, and watching. And I think McConaughey does a really good job of playing that off. His realization that, oh God, I've left everyone on Earth to die. And he has a hard time dealing with that. But
Yeah.
but I think Damon, again. My one complaint is his whole when he leaves McConaughey to die. I think he's really good elsewhere. Although for a movie where nobody does there's really only two instances where people do stupid things. One is Hathaway on the water planet, not realizing there's a time crunch and leaving the essentially the black box. But You have to buy that Damon is
Well,
stupid enough not to get a perfect lock, and not to realize what the consequences of having a perfect lock in the endurance are what's gonna happen. You have to kind of hand wave that away.
He's got space madness. I'm fine with space madness in a film of this type. He's been isolated for very long, and he's is exposed him as a as kind of a lacking person. And he realizes that on some level, and yeah, he's going out in a blaze of cowardly glory. It's it's fantastic. I'm not gonna listen. I'm gonna duck. Whatever.
I want to go on record as being all for space madness in movies of any type.
Yeah,
I think When
yeah.
Harry Met Sally could have used a dash more of space madness in it.
Well, if you want space madness, you got to add Astra too. You got to and
There you go.
Sunshine. Sunshine's really got space madness for you.
Oh, Sunshine of Space Madness, the movie, which
Oh yeah,
some people don't like that about it.
see, I
Ad
love that.
Astra,
I love that. For
Ad,
me, that
Ad,
made Sunshine much more than it would have been otherwise. But that's neither here nor there.
Ad Astra
We'll do it for you.
has space madness infecting a monkey, which is just,
I love that. That scene is so
chef's kiss
great.
stuff.
That was so
It's my
great.
favorite thing in the world. It exists in such a self-serious movie.
I know.
It just doesn't even blink at
Mhm.
at what it's doing there. It's fantastic.
I think I got to rewatch Ad Astra. I remember, I remember being kind of annoyed with it and kind of liking it. I think if I watch it again, I'll like it more. And
Yeah.
because I do remember some very good things from that. Like for that, the tone of that movie, you forget all the weird stuff in there. They get chased by pirates on the moon
Moon Pirates.
I
yeah,
love
there's
it.
moon pirates.
I love it.
Like
It's great.
I think
And they don't
Donald
even
Sutherland gets
explain
like,
it. It's just
yeah,
the moon pirates. All right, you got to roll with. There's facts that are thrown
Well,
at you that you just kind of got to roll with, and you go, all right. But I liked it. I liked it overall. I thought it was a good
I mean, I think
I guess I should clarify. I don't like Ad Astra, but the thing I find fun to talk about is just that how it is the most self-serious movie in the world, and yet it's got
right.
these elements that are absolutely absurd. And there's something weirdly charming about that. At least like after the fact, in the theater, I was rolling my eyes a bit more.
well,
But the
that's
Moon
the thing.
Pirates are great.
Could that be something like like this for me? Where I mean, it didn't work for you with Interstellar, but like where once you know what you're in for going in, you can kind of roll with it a little bit more and appreciate some of the choices made along the way. I feel like that would
Yeah.
happen with Ad Astra. I think that happens with most of these hard sci-fi movies that we're talking about here. Like, I think that the first one you kind of just have to come to grips with it and understand what the film is. Then the second time you're like, okay, I really appreciate how they've crafted this, and that seems to have happened with all of them for me.
Yeah, that's definitely
Well,
what happened to me with Interstellar. Again, I wasn't
it,
blown. I didn't. I thought it was okay in the movie theater, and again, I'm on record that I absolutely love the movie now.
I feel bad that I missed the boat. As I thought it was okay in the theater, and then I watched it again, and I still think it's just okay. But you guys got this great like experience out of it. that I'm
Well,
a bit
I mean,
jealous of.
yeah, I don't know. It's not my favorite Nolan film. I think it's really good. I think it's one of his better ones. But it is. It has its elements that are not great. We talked about a few of these, but yeah, well, on the whole, it's. I think this is a great film to just watch. And it doesn't like over ask you. It doesn't like demand your full attention the entire time in the way Inception does or Tenet does. It has a lot of things that are good about those movies, but it has a lot of fun things that are good about Spielberg movies. It has a lot of Kubrick in it as well. It's just like this one feels like Nolan as kind of a student of cinema. He's like, well, I got to make my space movie. All the great guys did a space movie. I'm going to do a space movie and find the things that are interesting about that to him that he can make significantly his own. The time thing is an obvious way to go about that,
Yeah.
but he also wrestles with like love and motion and family stuff, which has always sort of not been
Well,
his forte up to this
the
point.
time thing and the big noble lie and the Michael Caine
Yeah,
is custodian of your children and the dead wife like that. He finds those ways to make it all his own.
of
Um,
course.
but like you're saying, that you're right that this is his big space movie, and actually that's the part of this that really works for me. It's everything like between the wormholes when they once they go through the wormhole outside of Saturn or wherever, and they're in the other galaxy, and then up until he goes in to the Tesseract and starts fucking around with the plaid kaleidoscope bookcase thing. Uh, that's where I feel like the movie's really humming, and that's just the straight up space stuff. It's people debating hard questions about how to balance the fragility of humanity and emotions against these incredibly impossibly high stakes and impossibly hostile environments that they have to operate in. And that stuff hums for me. I love it. And I kind of wish that that was like the whole movie and not 40% of the movie.
I think
I
it's more
do.
than 40.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, yeah,
Yeah, I think okay.
it's a significant amount of this movie. There's one great runner that's going on in this, which is that a lot of what they do is kind of emotional, based on emotions, and even a little bit of spiteful tit for tat between the characters
Mhm.
is going on in this at the same time. Like the Anne Hathaway on the water planet screws up, wastes him several years, even though she knows that Coop's got kids and that's the most important thing to Coop, but maybe that is Coop being selfish as well. Those things kind of go into their next decision, which is they choose the Matt Damon planet instead of the one where Anne Hathaway has an emotional connection. And
Right.
you get the sense that there is a scientific reason to go to the Matt Damon planet to some extent,
There's a
but
rationale.
it's
But they're
sort
also
of,
punishing her.
yeah, they're sort of punishing her.
Well, it's closer. I mean, they
And
say for fuel usage and supply usage, it makes sense to go to Matt Damon's planet versus the other one.
But
mhm.
there was reasons. I don't remember all the details now for why the other one might be a better option too. And I think that it was great that they give Anne Hathaway the moment of later on saying like, I'm sure when it's you want to get to your kids, you'll be just as objective. And like, yeah, that's that sort of character conflict is the stuff that works for me in this.
It is.
Yes,
I'm greedy
It
for
is
more of
good.
that.
It's well
and speaking
written
of Hathaway,
conflict, I think, too.
yeah, they give her that monologue about the power of love, which should not work, should be impossible. She nails it. She does a great job in this. I complained about her in Dark Knight. She's awesome in this movie. This is one of her better performances, I think. I think she's great in this.
She's good.
And
She sells that monologue,
yeah,
which doesn't work for me on the page either, because that's another one of the things
shouldn't.
where
Yeah,
you know,
Right.
well, there's a bit in there where she's like, "What's the evolutionary value in continuing to love people after they died?" And McConaughey is immediately just like, "There is none." And I'm like, I don't know. Again, as an English major who read one book on this stuff, like I can concoct a hypothesis for that, and you guys are like the smartest people on that Earth has to offer. I feel like you should be farther ahead of me at certain parts of this movie, but Hathaway kind of makes that work in spite of itself.
yeah,
And it's like it's a good enough idea that like okay, that scientifically I feel like I could rebut this in some way, but as an emotional conflict for a film to explore, it's on point.
Well, for me, I mean, I personally have had situations where I know things regarding loved ones that I shouldn't know. I mean, as a prime example for myself, um, when I was in college, my grandfather died, and it happened while I was in class, and I remember feeling really, really like something's wrong, and I ended up going back to my residence, and my brother was there, and I immediately knew, oh, Grandpa died. That explains it. And he was like, yeah, it's I feel that whole thing about having an emotional connection to someone that transcends reason or science, I believe in it. So for me, that speech that she gives, she goes, we can't explain it. What's the reason for it? Well, again, for me, that works. And that's something that on a personal level, I can buy in on. But that said, yes, I mean, she sells a speech that I don't know if it's necessarily written as well as it could be on the page, but I think her performance is subdued and earnest enough that it works.
yeah. It's just a speech that wouldn't come out of a person naturally, and a really good actor makes it sound natural. It's just one of those things. Yeah, she's a really good actor. She's
Yeah.
great in this, and yeah, I mean, I think a lot of, I think everyone in this is pretty much great. I think everyone's doing very good work. Michael Caine could
Even
easily
Topher
have just
Grace?
done. No, not him. But everyone else. No, you know what? He doesn't even. Does he deliver a performance in this? I don't want to complain about him. There's nothing to complain about. But Michael Caine,
Agree with you
great
entirely.
great job, and it would be easy for him to phone this in. He did in Inception. It was fine. I feel like he delivers kind of a real performance here, even if it's one I think maybe could have been cut a little from the final edit in some ways. I love watching him do a deathbed confession scene. He's just good, He's a real good actor.
I
Bill
disagree.
Irwin is
I think we
Tars.
could have
Oh.
used 4 more recitations of Rage against the Dying of the Light.
I would love how Damon comes back and does that too.
I
Subverts
just,
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I, that speak unrelated, but every time I hear that movie, all I can think about is the Rodney Dangerfield movie Back to School. That poem was ruined. I don't know, ruined is the wrong thing, but every time I hear that poem, that's all I can think about is him reciting that with Sally Kellerman.
I mean, it does. Interstellar does kind of like put its stamp on that. It's like we want you to think of Interstellar every time you hear that poem. Now, this poem belongs to Interstellar. Now, it's like Reservoir Dogs taking Stuck in the Middle with You or whatever. It's
Yeah. That is, oh god, that's the perfect counterpoint between like our Tarantino series and our Nolan series. That Tarantino is going to reclaim the super sounds of the 70s, and Nolan is going to reclaim the romantic poets of the 19th century.
There you go. What do you think of Hans Zimmer's score in this? Because it's very distinctive compared to a lot of his other works. It's essentially a cathedral organ. What do you
You
think of it?
mentioned that half an hour ago, and I meant to say that, like, yeah, like it's really great. It's become easy for us to take an exceptional Hans Zimmer score for granted at this point in the Nolan-oscopy, uh, because they're everywhere. They've been in each of the
Right.
movies we've done, lately. I'm assuming like Tenet will have one too at this point. I haven't seen that one yet.
But it's
no
just,
different person. Different person. Yeah, not
yeah.
Zimmer on that one.
But I think,
Um,
this one, because it is essentially just a cathedral organ, has a real distinctive regal feel to it that his other scores don't have. I really think it works in this, giving things almost a church feeling to it, a regal,
Yeah,
much more
a
heavy
grandeur.
feeling, I think, and to me it really works. And there's some exceptional pieces in here. You have the cornfield chase, which is really, really good. You have No Time for Caution, when the Endurance is spinning and they're going to do the docking sequence, which is again another really, really well done sequence, I think, in the film, another highlight. But
mhm.
there's a number of pieces in there that I think really stand out quite nicely. um, I think it's one of his strongest scores.
It's a very good score. He doesn't do a lot of bad scores, not for movies like this, not for Nolan. Like they're good. It's very good.
But
It's not as good as Inception for me. It's not one of the all timers for me. It's very notable. I couldn't hum anything of this, but that's not necessarily what Zimmer's going for most of the time. But it's certainly good. Of
yeah,
course, it's good.
it's become table stakes at this point, though, that we expect all of like these actors and composers, editors, whoever, like, costume designers, to all just be doing like top notch work throughout
Yeah.
That's fair.
these Nolan movies. So we end up just sort of like nitpicking the scripts mostly. It seems like.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's a gorgeous film as well.
Mhm.
This is, I think, the best looking film that we've covered yet for Nolan,
Agreed.
in my opinion. This is
I
a
mean,
gorgeous film.
Inception looks great too. Yeah, this probably is.
They all
You
look
know,
good, but
I think The Dark Knight actually just.
a
I think
very
this.
good argument can be made for Dark Knight. But
Yeah,
I don't know. This one has the space stuff. I really like the
it does.
the
This one,
presentational images of space travel.
And I love,
Where it's this weird globular world, or it's so
right.
cool.
And
it
I
almost
think the
doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't
endurance
feel
is so
fair if you
cool.
get to do a wormhole. Like
Right.
it's
This is the
just.
first one that's not Wally Pfister in a very long time. This is Hoyt van Hoytema, and Wally Pfister went off to direct his own movies after this, like Transcendence. But I think it's a trade up. I gotta say, because Hoyt van Hoytema does the next few, and they both look great too.
I agree. I
Yeah,
think it was really good. But yeah, I think from a set design standpoint, the Endurance is right up there with the Odyssey from 2001 in terms of just a believable working environment. And I mean, it's a cool looking ship from the outside, and then the interior of it, you just look at it and you go, all right, well, this makes sense. It has, everything looks like it's been repurposed. If you're building a spaceship modularly and you're building it using whatever is available at the time, considering again that you're having a regression of technology, everything has a slightly retro look to it. It doesn't look like a bunch of iPads all over. You know what I mean? It's a bunch of screens and switches and looks like
Mhm.
older airplane chairs and things like that. You have a whiteboard. I mean, for crying out loud, they pull down a
Yeah.
whiteboard and draw on it versus like drawing it on an iPad. You know,
You know
it's
what?
got a really cool, functional, real lived-in feel to it that I really, really like. I think it's very appealing to me.
You raise a really good point, actually. I think about that the way that regression of technology is woven into this, like, future science fiction world, actually is great in that way, where it justifies having the spaceship be a little more old, like analog, a little more
Yeah.
of that like Millennium Falcon, like used car look, as opposed
Yeah.
to what is probably a more realistic, future spaceship where everything is on tablets or screen. Everything's very antiseptic, and it's just going to be people with contact lenses in that are showing them a screen and nobody else. But that's not cinematic. Like the whiteboard is
Right.
great for us as the audience. So yeah, having that technological regression built into this near future actually is great for that.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like if you had designed a ship in the '80s, thinking what's a future ship going to look like, this is what you would get. You know, again, and your comparison to the Millennium Falcon is very apt. You know, it's very analog looking. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
but in general, it's beautiful. It's a beautifully designed ship. It makes sense. Um, it's the the way that they make it move through space is very elegant. I don't know. I thought everything about that ship was just really, really neat. And I liked the way that um, the two Rangers and then the two cargo ships matched, mated with it, how that all worked. It just, you looked at it and you go, okay, I get it. I understand it. It was an easily understandable ship. Um, and it looked very functional and believable. And it was something I could totally buy into as a real thing for the actors to interact with. I don't know. It was one of the more
yeah, man. When
successful
this movie's in space,
spacecrafts.
I'm completely on board.
Yeah.
That's I love it. But we got to move on. It's going to be it's and we got to go back to Dunkirk next.
Yeah. There's no getting away from it. No
I wouldn't
escape.
mind seeing
Whatever the
Nolan go
line
back
is.
to space at some point, actually. But
I agreed.
I
Agreed.
I realized during this film what I want to see him do next. Should we save that? I don't know. I know what I want him to do. I want him
if
to
it's
do
related to this film, sure.
a little. I want to do full Kubrick stuff now. I want him to do genre sampling, and
Mm.
and I think because of the there's aspects of this movie that deal with existential dread in a way that it's not really
Oh,
going for scares.
but you want a Nolan horror movie?
I want full on Nolan horror. Yeah,
I'd
Wow.
agree with that. I'd be up for that.
yeah. Like I want his The Shining now. I want him to do a fucked up existential horror film.
But
That would be
if he's going to
good.
do it though, it's going to be very British. It's probably going to be like a period piece. It's gonna be like an
That's
adaptation of
okay.
The Turning of the Screw or something.
I don't want that. I don't want that. Okay, oh, here, perfect. I want to do a horror movie. I want to do something like The Shining, and I want to do something that's very Nolan. I wanted to adapt The Jaunt, the Stephen King short story, The Jaunt. Find a way to make that a movie.
I don't know.
It's
I
perfect.
think I know that
See,
one.
Oh, it's a scary one. It's his sci-fi thing. Yeah.
I would like to see Nolan tackle something along the lines of The Thing.
Yes.
I was about
That
to say,
I
yeah,
you know
Nolan
what I mean?
body horror sounds like an
Yeah,
interesting challenge for him.
right. And a big thing, and his whole thing is trying to find a gimmick to deal with. I don't know what gimmick he could apply to a concept like The Thing, but I think he could do a really, really interesting take on that concept. I mean, you're gonna be hard pressed to top the Carpenter film. I really think. I don't know how you're gonna do
Well,
it.
don't
But
go
Nolan,
like
but
The
I wouldn't
Thing,
rule it
but
out that
something like that.
Nolan.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, and I'm
Mhm.
not saying totally like remake The Thing. Although, if Nolan were to do it, I'd be there opening night. But I that's
Fair.
the kind of thing that I could really see him doing something along that lines and making a really cool film.
Well, he could make a remake of something along the lines of what Carpenter did or what Cronenberg did with The Fly. That seems to be the way to go. Take some horror premise and just Nolan it up some. Make the
He could
Nolan
remake a
version.
Cronenberg movie, honestly.
Yeah, sure.
If he did video,
Which
like
one?
his version of Videodrome, like
Oh,
had the updated.
that's good.
Now I want that. That would be
Oh
awesome.
man,
That would be
really
a good
force him to
one.
deal with sex there.
No,
That'd be fun.
Scanners. Nolan's version of Scanners would be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
All right.
okay, that's what I wanted to do. Okay, maybe that's what Oppenheimer will be. Right.
We'll see. I can't wait to see that. I mean, what a cast he's got for that. That's going to be that'll be
Yeah, I
promising.
mean, after doing all this, obviously, I'm psyched for Oppenheimer. What is that, next year? That's next year, right?
I think next year.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
We'll do an episode on that when it comes out.
for sure. Should
But
we?
thanks, Matt. Yeah, we
Yeah.
should wrap up.
Do we want to try the Do we want to try the character actor guess who, or do we not have time for that today? Maybe.
I can do a round if you guys are ready.
You good for it, Matt?
Absolutely. Sign me up.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Let's
Pick a
give it
number.
shot. Yeah.
Pick a number.
Yeah.
7.
Are you familiar with this game?
I am not.
Lucky number 7. Okay. So I am going to essay the role of a character actor. I am going to read you the listing that the year of the first listing I have on the Internet Movie Database, and from there on, you and John will alternate asking me one question at a time about my career,
Okay.
things that I could quickly answer from Wikipedia
Yes or no?
or IMDb.
Yes or no questions.
So mainly just like you pick a year, I'd give you what I was in that year. Or if I named a movie, you can ask that movie and like what your character was. Or you could ask what year you were born, what awards you won, that type of stuff. So just I'm now getting into character here as this actor, and my first IMDb credit is in the year of our Lord 1984. So John, why don't you kick us off with a follow-up question?
I'm going to ask what films was this actor in the year 1997? This is one of my go-tos.
In the year 1997, I was in one TV movie called Subway Stories: Tales from the Underground.
Okay, this doesn't help at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a wild stab in the dark. Are you William Peterson?
I am not William Peterson.
All right.
But thank you for asking.
All right. My turn.
Matt, do you? Sure.
What genre of movies am I most associated with?
That's a little tougher for me to answer. That's a little more judgment call. But if I had, I might say rom-coms.
Interesting.
Yeah, we already guessed William Peterson, so.
I don't have a guess. Sorry.
All right.
I can't think of anyone.
I'm going to guess another year, 2002.
2002. I was in one film called Stolen Summer.
Oh, I know what that movie is. That's
You do?
the Project Greenlight movie. The first Project
really?
Greenlight movie. Yes.
The very first one. Okay.
Yeah, the one with it's about a little kid. It's about a little Catholic kid who is
a Catholic boy tries to convert a terminally ill Jewish boy so he'll be able to go to heaven.
It's a gross movie. Okay, well, I remember Aidan Quinn is in it. Is it him? Is Aidan Quinn the actor?
I am not Aidan Quinn.
Okay.
I think if you had listened carefully to my accent, you would have known that I was not an Irish gentleman. All right, back to you, man.
I'm going to say what did I do in the year 2010?
2010 was a bigger year for me. I was in the TV series The Life and Times of Tim. It's an animated feature on HBO. I don't know if you remember that one.
Sure.
I was really just doing voice work this year. I was also did a voice in Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 3, the video game.
I am going to guess Jim Varney.
I am not Ernest P. Worrell himself, Jim Varney. I mean, more's the pity, but I am not.
Right. I was just trying to think because I think the first Ernest movie was like around 1984 or something like that, or maybe 86. I don't know. That was a stab in the dark. Okay.
All right. Give me 1993.
93. All right. Okay. Pretty big year for me. I was in a TV series called The Building. I was in a short film called For Goodness Sake. I was in the political thriller Dave and the cinematic masterpiece Beethoven Second.
Are you Bonnie Hunt?
You're goddamn right I'm Bonnie Hunt.
All right. Yeah, Bonnie Hunt. Nice. All right. Cool. I feel like that was a tough one.
That
Yeah,
was.
a little
Well,
bit.
I didn't know.
Bonnie Hunt of Jumanji fame. And Cars?
Yeah.
She's in the Cars? She's in a lot of Pixar's. I think she's a TV. You know
Cheaper
what?
by the dozen. She had her own like sitcom, call it self-titled.
Plays a lot of long-suffering wives, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think she was the best friend in a couple of Meg Ryan movies. I want to say she was, or no, in Jerry Maguire, she was Renee Zellweger's best friend. Probably somebody's best friend in Beethoven Second.
I think she's the wife. I think
she's
she's
the
the
wife,
long-suffering wife of the Beethovens.
That's
Yeah.
true.
I concede victory to you, John.
Well, thank you for joining us, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
This was Interstellar, and Dunkirk next. We're winding down here. Only a couple more to go before we take a year off and then do Oppenheimer. I don't know. Racing down the barrel here. I'm really excited to get to Tenet at this point. Even
I'm
though
a little dreading going to Dunkirk is one that feels like it has nowhere to go but down after the theater. So we'll deal with that next.
Thank you for listening. See you next time.